Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Hello and good evening everybody, and welcome back to Apex Racing TV, and welcome back to the 2024 Radical Americas Championship. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Mr. Charles Michelle, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Josh Wilkie. Tonight we head to Oulton Park for the 7th round of the season, and despite the circuit being very narrow and very old school in its design, these modern Radical SR10s always put on some awesome racing here. And now with this season over halfway over as well, these drivers may start to feel even more racy than they usually are. So to pass this off to you, Charles, at this track with some very close quarters, do you expect some fisticuffs break out tonight?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those tracks that's kind of built for really tight racing, so it wouldn't surprise me we see some a little bit of wheel banging during the course of this race. Oulton Park is, you know, classic British track. We were here with another series last week, and this series, you know, it's just going to be one of those, you know, really high downforce cars, really good speed. Tight track, lots of turns, very tight cornering. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot of good side-by-side racing.
Side-by-side racing, I think, is going to be the name of the game, especially in the 15-minute sprint race that we have coming up in the not-too-distant future. We're still in this practice session, and we're going to get a fantastic view of some of these drivers hucking it around this 12-corner racetrack in all. One thing that we should mention here at Oulton Park, usually you do have some chicanes on this back straightaway. We're coming up to one that we usually have right now, that being the Bryn chicane. We're not dealing with that, and we're not going to be dealing with the Hislop chicane either. We're following Diego Zuccarelli heading his way down that back straightaway into Knickerbrook of turn number 7. And this is a track that was used in the Radical Esports Cup official races throughout this past week. The official races here in iRacing, accounting towards your license, and I actually participated in a few of those, so did our producer Josh. And let me tell you, driving this car at speed around this track is really, really tough. The sort of lap times that we're setting, I think the fastest I set was a 1 minute 20.5, or roughly in that ballpark. So seeing these drivers hucking it around, and I actually raced with one of the drivers that is going to be participating in the races we have this evening, but I'll touch on that in a little bit. I think now that we're still in this practice session, and before we get into qualifying, I think we should probably touch on the championship results if we do have them. So I'll wait for those to get loaded up here in the not too distant future, still enjoying the beautiful views around Oulton Park. I gotta say one thing about these British tracks, they have some beautiful scenery around the circuit. Here are the championship point standings. Lucas Vieira, the Brazilian driver, I nearly said the Brit, we're running at a British track, but it's a Brazilian at the front of the pro standings, 140 points on the board. He's 7 ahead of Franco Sanchez in P number 2, and Ryan Odo, the young American, has been very fast in this series. Those three at the north end of the standings are the ones that we need to keep our eyes on throughout the second half of this season. Eric Harmon is currently in P number 4. Rylan Richard as well. He's put on some pretty good shows in that Flying Eagle Motorsports car. He is currently 5th in the pro standings as things shake out with 6 rounds on the board. Then you can see John Bindley, Diego Zuccarelli, Bruno Abrantes, Mark Harris, and Timothy Salvatore rounding out the top 10 in the pro category. A somewhat inconsistent cast of characters. We have had some consistent, and in the AM category it has been consistently close. Joel Jacklin is leading it currently in that free agent car. The free agent doing a very good job so far this season, to be tied on points with Andy Vocal in P number 2, and Vocal was a driver that I got a chance to race side by side with in the officials earlier on this week. Hunter Reeve in P3, only 2 points back of the front two tied on points. At Charles Krasik in 4th, not a very far off of Hunter Reeve or Joel Jacklin or Andy Vocal for that matter. Cedric Oyahan in P number 5, Adrian Fernandez in 6th, Mayor Denarine in P number 7, Luis Pires in 8th, Manuel Solorzano in P number 9, and rounding out your top 10 is going to be Chris Heide in the AM category. But that is absolutely insane. The front 3 in the AM category separated by 2 points with a decent amount of races on the board so far, Charles. That is going to be an absolute insane class, so we need to keep our eyes on all throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the top 5 separated by 8 points. That's pretty intense at the top of the grid. So yeah, it's these races are just, it seems like every weekend, every time we're here, it's a pretty tight battle amongst the classes, and I don't think today is going to be any exception. I think this track is just really made for radical racing. I think it's going to be a fun race to watch.
And for those who are curious about what the other drivers in the AM standings look like, we have a small little technical graphic. We'll get that sorted out for you in the not too distant future. We got a nice view of the rest of the drivers in the AM standings. We're now in this qualifying session, and when I mentioned the cast of characters so far this season, the heavy hitters have been around pretty much for every single race so far this season across the Americas and the European Championship as well. Charles and I are off the back of doing both Weekend Warriors broadcast here on Apex Racing TV, and let me say, Jorge Gonzaga and James Berry, who I recognize as being heavy hitters on the Radical side of things here on Apex Racing TV, they were running in the Radical European Championship earlier on this afternoon. I say earlier on this evening. It was about 3 hours ago when, I say 3 hours ago, 5 hours ago now, when that race happened, and they immediately got from that Formula Ford Weekend Warriors race car and straight in these Radical SR10s, which is a very abrupt change. It's like moving from New York City to like the middle of Iowa. It's just such a complete change in terms of your surroundings and what you have to deal with. So those two, I give a whole lot of credit to the both of them for making that very abrupt change to be in that European Championship race earlier on today. And now we've got the cast of characters in the Radical Americas Championship starting up this qualifying session.
Yeah, it's we'll see what the times as they start coming in. As we're seeing, I believe that's 34 car of Andy Vocal out on his lap. A couple purple sectors already. Those will change obviously as more and more drivers get out there, and the speeds ramp up. So it should be very interesting on that second lap. Once the tires get some heat in them, then we'll see what kind of lap times we're going to get here. But obviously these cars at certain tracks, and this may be one of those, are pretty close to GT3 speeds. It's just because they don't have quite the massive amounts of horsepower, but they're much lighter and they're much more aerodynamic, lots more downforce. And so they take these corners at quite a bit higher speed than your standard GT car.
Yeah, these cars are, I wouldn't say suspiciously quick, because that sounds quite possibly illegal. However, these cars are sneakishly quick. I'll leave it at that. We're riding on board with a familiar face here on Apex Racing TV, Mr. J.R. Gregory, who I sat in the commentary booth with for an entire year on the Radical Officials. He is still commentating the Radical Esports Cup here on Apex Racing TV week in and week out with Tom Dillon. You can catch them along with our buddy Josh Wilkie in the production hauler every single Friday at 2100 GMT, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And JR making his debut in this series. He was actually joining me in the commentary booth for the first round of the championship all the way back in February, so nice to see him out on track. He is currently 10th in this qualifying session in that 218 car. We'll see what he can do, and I must say, JR, very nice looking hat in that photo you have with these SDK graphics. That is a pretty nice look. I like the hat there, JR. So I think before we talk about some fashion, we should probably get back on subject and talk about this qualifying session. Some drivers already saying some very fast lap times.
Yeah, Vera up at the top, as we've seen time and time again, with a 119.759. Just so quick, and it's obviously huge, almost 0.8 of a second lead over Volkel there at the top of the board.
That is absurdly quick. Oh man, that is fast.
Yep.
I think some of these drivers are, the big thing with these cars is the lap times that we're seeing right now, they're probably going to be beat in the races. Rylan Richard locks it up heading into the Shell Oil corner and goes for a one-way trip into that outside tire barrier. Rylan Richard is going to be taken out of this qualifying session. Single car qualifying, as you can probably already tell watching this broadcast, a bit different from all the other broadcasts we do here on Apex Racing TV, it must be said, Charles, but it does work in these Radical SR10 races, and it is what they have in the officials. So you always got to keep that connection to the main big series on iRacing with these cars.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the solo qualifying works for this. Obviously, this, you get out there for a solo qualifying run, and it's about your pace and not, do I get a draft off of somebody down the back stretch, maybe gain me a couple of tenths here and there. Where you can kind of time things a little bit and have some people that you can work with. This is all about your pace, how you can get the car to go around the track as fast as you humanly can. As we get further into this, we'll talk about some of the challenges these drivers are going to have around this course. Luckily, no chicanes. I think that makes for it's going to make for much faster lap times, obviously. And probably fewer incidents, because those chicanes will bite a driver during the course of a race.
Even in this qualifying session, these drivers are having to deal with the difficulties that are faced every single race in these Radical SR10s. The main one here at this track being just trying to get those tires up to temperature. These Radical SR10s usually take 2 to 3 laps to try and get yourself up to speed, get the brakes in that right temperature window, get the tires in the right temperature window as well, and really get yourself settled into a groove. This car drives differently from pretty much everything else in iRacing, and that's not really an insult. It's a very fun car to drive, and it really is rewarding once you get it right. But still, you gotta rewire your brain quite a lot when it comes to trying to get this car up to speed, especially in these qualifying sessions. Trying to get the wins and podiums and as many points as you possibly can in this series to make your way into the World Finals. That is huge for a lot of these drivers, and a big challenge that they have to face week in and week out. We're riding on board with Joel Jacklin. We were riding on board with him through that final sector. He jumps up to 9th overall at a 120.763. That is an absurdly quick lap time, especially compared to what I was doing in the officials earlier on this week. Meanwhile, our buddy JR currently in 12th at a 121.166, so not too bad from our buddy in the Flying Lion Racing Radical. Meanwhile, Adrian Fernandez, not the kart driver, however, we did have a former IndyCar driver running in the early stages of this season. This is a different Adrian Fernandez, the American in the 127 car, rounding his way through Lodge corner of turn number 11, about to go through turn number 12 to complete his lap. Let's see if he improves from P15. Don't think he did.
I don't think so.
Talk about an anticlimax.
Yeah, I will say this: the top 10 separated by right around 1 second, so that's a pretty tight grid up at the top.
Oh, that is, yeah, that's it's vacuum sealed, this entire field. That's pretty much what it is so far in this qualifying session. Not a whole lot of time left to go to, only a minute and a half left. J.R. Gregory still hauling the mail in that Radical SR10. You know, when I saw that J.R. was racing with us tonight, I was thinking on trying to do an open like he usually does for the Radical Esports Cup. I feel like I would absolutely butcher it, and oh, that's a half spin coming out of the final corner. Keeps it out of the barriers. Very nicely played from JR, and that's a mistake we may see a lot from these drivers this evening. The weight transfer is huge in this car. It really can trip you up, especially at a track like this. Coming out of that final corner, the road drops away from you, the car gets really light, and you could just spin this car like a top trying to get on the power.
Yeah, absolutely. That last corner is very difficult. It's very much a rhythm corner that you have to just get your braking and your weight transfer, and then back on the throttle, just everything correct. And you have to keep the car on the track. Once these cars, and it's not just this car, but lots of other cars as well, once they get off in the curbs and off on that lattice work that's out on the edge, sometimes the car doesn't react the way you think it's going to, and you end up just either getting too hard back on the throttle or you just lose the rear end completely. And JR did a good job to just catch that car to keep it from going into the wall.
We'll say some of these drivers, they won't want to try and do that in the races we have coming up today, just because I think your front tires would turn into rectangles if you had that severe of a lockup. And speaking of, the brakes are very difficult to manage in these race cars. But I think before we talk about the braking issues or some of the other challenges that these drivers may face in this race, I think we may take a look at the starting grid. The qualifying session has wrapped up, and we'll get the starting grid for you right about now. It's Lucas Vieira starting this race from the pole, a 119.759. It's absolutely blistering. He'll be leading the field to green. Franco Sanchez is going to be starting alongside him on the front row. That's Ryan Odo in P3, Andy Vocal in fourth. A very good result for the AM driver. He's going to be starting this race in fourth. Ryland Richard in fifth. Eric Harmon in sixth. John Bentlid in seventh. Diego Zuccarelli in P number 8. Joel Jacqueline in P9. David Unger, the Australian, is going to round out your top 10. That's Charles Krasik in 11th. J.R. Gregory in P number 12. And then looking down throughout the rest of the field, we have Hunter Reeve, Cedric Goyahan, Adrian Fernandez, Tyler Vickery, and Luis Pires rounding out your 17 car grid for this race. Whole lot of AM drivers, whole lot of pro drivers.
Yep, absolutely. As we've got, maybe Ron's having a little issue there. So yeah, as they're lining up on the grid. Oh, there we go. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Just want to remind everybody that we do have a standing start for these two races, so it'll be not a roll, and we'll get the 5 reds and then the green, and then we'll be off to the races.
The technical issues continue here today. I had a technical issue before the start of the Weekend Warriors Formula Ford broadcast earlier on this afternoon. I had to restart my PC for that. So the technical issues seem to continue here. So I guess after doing a 4.5 hour long endurance race broadcast, my computer has decided to act up and play some tricks on me here this evening. So fingers crossed that's the last of the technical problems. And hopefully my mic doesn't give out on this first lap, which we're going to get started in just a few moments time. The lights are out and the drivers are on their way. They're all managing the wheel spin beautifully, and it's a beautiful start from our pole sitter Vieira. He's going to be leading them into turn number 1. Meanwhile, some side-by-side action a little bit farther in the back. Drivers trying to risk it for the biscuit earlier on in this race. I think that's a driver going off a little bit farther in the back so far. All the field, most of the field at least, making their way through the first corners of this lap. Very, very clean. It's still Lucas Vieira trying to extend that gap as they're about to head into the island bend for the first time. This is a really tough corner. I went off here myself, so I won't be too shocked if we see a driver go off as well. They negotiate that corner clean. Then you head into Shell Oil's corner. That's going to be a good overtaking opportunity, and also an opportunity for these drivers to make some sort of mistake. You really have to focus on the exit though, because you go onto this long flat out blast, the longest on this circuit by a country mile, going uphill then back downhill, crescendoing your way into Knickerbrook of turn number 7. A good good overtaking opportunity if you have the stones to pull it off, but all these drivers negotiating lap one, clean and rise. I say that's a spinner off the track. Who was that? I think they just had a big snap mid-corner. I think that may have been Tyler Vickery behind the wheel of the number 24 car. That is a huge off, and you can see the tire marks in the grass. Tyler Vickery is the first victim from tonight's sprint race.
Yeah, that was the Nickelbrook is a very, very difficult corner because you are basically at max speed, trying to get the car slowed down, stay on your brakes, not without locking them up. And yeah, hate it for Tyler. I'm sure he'll come back and get a tow and probably come back for the next race and try it again. As we're coming out of turn 3 here, headed down the straightaway toward Island Bend. Very tricky corner here, as you said. You don't be trying to make a pass here because if you miss apex and you get wide, the only thing that's going to stop you is that giant tire wall, and you need to get it slowed down in time for Shell Oil here. Shell Oil is great corner for passing. Very highly cambered corner. You can go in and take that corner much faster than you realize. And once you get going good, you'll figure it out. But it is a good place to make a move.
And you can see David Unger nearly going for an attempted overtake. He runs a little bit wide off into the dirt. A rough ride for David Unger. He's going to lose out on that top 10 spot after trying to go for a move on Charles Krasik. Just wasn't close enough. Misjudged it badly, and now he's lost out on that P10 spot to Reeve. He may be feeling some pressure from J.R. Gregory here in the not too distant future. Those two covered by about a second at the end of lap number 2. We're beginning lap 3 now. It's Vieira still at the front, and here is a replay of what happened to Tyler Vickery at the very beginning of the race. The driver of the number 24 car had a good starting spot heading into the corner. It looked like it snapped very quickly, hit that inside curb, and that weight transfer once again catching out another driver, this one being Vickery.
Yeah, that inside curb just caught him and unsettled the car at a place where he needed to have maximum grip. He really didn't have any. He was kind of bouncing, and next thing you know, he's up against the wall, and he's completely destroyed the left rear suspension of that Radical.
I'll tell you what, if I had $1 for every single time I saw a Radical driver go off hitting a curb or having some sort of weird weight transfer driving around a racetrack, I would have enough money to buy my own Radical SR10 and a racetrack to drive it on as well. It's really, really tough. Sadly for Vickery, he gets caught out by having to tow back to the pits and also repair that race car. He is multiple laps down and pretty much entirely out of contention. Meanwhile, hard battling here. This is Diego Zuccarelli going side by side with Andy Vogel heading into turn number 10 of Druids. Close stuff between these two drivers, but they're managing it very, very well. Ryland Richard also getting a move put on him by Eric Harmon heading into the second to last corner of Lodge Bend. That was some good stuff as well. All these drivers pulling off some aggressive moves, but also getting them done clean. And now we're getting into that stage of the race where the tires are getting up into their operating window. These drivers staying in some cookers of lap times. They're going to start to push it really, really hard, and considering this is only a 15-minute long race, there's a whole lot at stake. You're not only looking to try and get the win in this first race of the evening, and a win in general in this series is pretty hard to come by, but you also want to set your starting position for that feature we have coming up later on this evening. So we may see some of these drivers start to push the envelope even more with these tires up to temp.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just looking at Vieira's last lap. He's only about a half second off of what they said in qualifying. So yeah, he's as the fuel burns off, he's going to get quicker and quicker. Probably will beat his qualifying time on nice, good worn tires and low fuel. Probably on the last lap of the race. So yeah, they're doing a great job so far. Only that one incident that we had with Vickery, so everybody else is running well. We haven't had any auto mechanical fisticuffs on the track just yet. So it's been a pretty good race so far.
Keyword being yet, Charles. I think it's a matter of when, not if, we're going to see these drivers start to battle very, very hard. This is a hard battle between David Unger going side by side with Cedric Oyahan coming out of Lodge Corner onto that start-finish not so straight straightaway. That's going to be Cedric Oyahan moving his way up into 12th. I will say another car that got caught out by a lap 1 incident as Oyahan does some rally action out of the corner. There's a bump on the outside of that corner as well, and if you hit that in these Radical SR10s, you're going going to take a one-way trip to the barrier. I learned that myself in the officials this past week, and I had probably one of the hardest accidents ever in a Radical SR10, and that would have been some bold stuff from David Unger going down the inside, and Oulton with a drift coming around the island bend. God bless America. God bless Canada, I should say, going sideways out of Island Bend, and he kept it out of the barriers. That was a beautiful save from Cedric Oulton. However, he definitely does not have clean pants after that, but thankfully for himself, he still has a clean race car.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think he was actually trying to make maybe a block on the car behind. Oh no, there's a car off in the background up against the wall hard.
Ooh, who was that? That may have been Fernandez, possibly. I see him losing some lap time. Yeah, you can see Fernandez with a damaged Radical SR10. I can see some damage on the left-hand side of that race car. So you caught it there, Charles, as Unger and Oulton go side by side yet again, this time heading into turn number 10 of Druids. Actually, no, that's coming out of turn number 11 of Lodge Corner. My apologies. Hard battling between these two continue. But that was very nicely caught there, Charles. I would not have seen that.
Yeah, kind of watching the replay and you saw the on-track action there, and yeah, just could kind of see it in the background as we were watching Oulton and Unger fighting. I think the car in front was actually trying to maybe make a little block going in Island Bend and just kind of crossed himself up. Luckily, Oulton was able to catch the car and actually was able to keep in front and not lose a position. So great bit of driving by both those guys, because it would have been real easy to just run up Oulton's tailpipes, and that would have been the end of it. Yep, there you go. Just took it too wide, and we've seen that before coming into that section of track at Niggerbrook, and just absolutely just slams the wall.
That is a wounded Radical SR10. I think he has come into the pits to repair that damage, understandably so, because we saw him limping that car back to pit lane after that off-track excursion, and that car was not running at full slung in any way, shape, or form. Tough stuff for Adrian Fernandez. That may be the first of many mistakes. That's the second off that we've seen in Knickerbrook so far. Only 8.5 minutes into this 15-minute race, and we still have a 45-minute race coming up later on this evening. Meanwhile, at the north end of the field, Lucas Vieira, our poleman, is still leading it. He has been the force to be reckoned with all throughout this season. The points don't really show it. However, he has been absolutely dominant. Ryan Odo, meanwhile, he has been a massive thorn in Vieira's side. Those two have been battling hard race after race with this Radical Americas Championship, and it looks like we're going to have a case of deja vu here at Oulton Park.
Yeah, it looks that way. Just you can see how close they're trying to get to that curb without actually hitting it. The curb that killed Vickery earlier in the race, and Sanchez has kind of dropped off. Normally he's up there battling with these two guys for the lead of this race. He's kind of dropped off the pace just a little bit. He's about a second, 1.8, 1.9 back of Odo, so kind of interesting.
It is pretty interesting. I'm not sure what in the world has happened to a lot. This race it's been a strange one thus far. We've seen some drivers go off with some simple mistakes, but up towards the north end of the field, these two have pulled away from Franco Sanchez. That is for darn sure, and Sanchez running effectively in no man's land. You can see him in the back of a shot. It's about 2.2 seconds off of this man, Ryan Odo, but the gap between Sanchez and Ryland Richard behind is about nearly 5 seconds. So Sanchez, I'm sure he probably has the most boring view of anyone right now. So I think we're hearing from our producer Josh that Sanchez has not had it easy in this race. He has gone off track on multiple occasions, racking up those incident points. He may want to be careful on those, to want to incur some sort of penalty that the race stewards may hand his way. Sanchez not having an easy going of things so far in this race, but he is fast. We'll just have to see if he can keep it on the road, manage to hang on to that P3 spot, or even try and close up that gap between Vieira and Odo, which is probably unlikely. But if Sanchez can start that feature race in P3, he'd be setting himself up quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a good starting position for him. So we see him back to Ryland Richard here. Really locked in with a battle with Benelid there for P4 and P5, kind of running together. That Vocal's just a few car lengths back in 6th, but these guys look like they're going to take this down to the wire to see who's going to get that 4th spot.
Oh, this is absolutely going to be close, and you can see pace-wise as well. They're fairly evenly matched lap time-wise. So we go, oh my God, that's a huge crash in the back involving Andy Vogel and Diego Zuccarelli. Zuccarelli getting the worst of it with a hard impact in the Armco barriers on the outside of Denton's turn number 2. We're gonna have to take a look at a whole lot of replays to see what exactly happened there coming out of turn number 1. I have my own theory, possibly involving that bump on the outside of the corner. This is the end of it. Oh, that's a huge hit.
Yeah, it kind of looked like we just called the end of it as well, because I think Volk, when we came back to that camera view, was already in half slide. So he come up through turn 1, loses the rear, just trying to catch the car, and comes back on the track, and just nowhere for those guys to go. Not sure they were expecting him to just ricochet back onto the track like that, and that was 3 very damaged race cars.
I think Diego Zuccarelli, he was the one that got the worst of that. I think his impact was so incredibly hard that we can barely find the replay to see what happened to him. Yeah, you can see that absolutely destroyed, damaged beyond repair, Radical SR10. You can see him after that incident. That was a huge hit. Double impact, really a triple impact as well. He got hit by Vocal and hit both layers of that Armco barrier, and that's our buddy J.R. Gregory going around the outside, I believe, of Eric Harmon, who is the other car involved in that. You can see Harmon still running with that NASCAR modified version of a Radical SR10, running with the air conditioning package, Charles.
Yes, he is, and that's makes the car a little bit lighter, but probably not as aerodynamically efficient as it was when it started the race. But he manages to hang on to P9 there. So he has got Unger just a few car lengths back, about a second, 1.2 seconds, something like that. As we see Vera with a little run here. This Odo making the move around to take over the lead.
They're beating and banging. Oh my God, Odo was all kinds of crossed up going over the hill outside of Druid's Corner, still side by side heading through the final corner of Lodge. Hard stuff between both of these drivers, beating and banging and roughing each other up, and I think they are on 2 to go. Didn't quite get the white this time by, but Ryan Odo trying everything in the book to get past Lucas Vieira. Vieira, meanwhile, desperately trying to hold on. That was incredible stuff between those two heading towards the end of the lap. I thought I was going to see at least one, if not both of those cars spear off into the barrier just based off how sideways Ryan Odo was, and you can see him with a fantastic run going through the back straightaway into Island Bend and Shell Oil corners now. But Ryan Odo, he's enjoying that drift, he's enjoying that slipstream, but there's not a whole lot you can do with that at this track. It's mainly just to stay hooked onto the back of the car in front of you, because you don't usually see a driver go for a move into Knickerbrook, but I think Ryan Odo is going to make me to look at like a damn fool. Side by side heading into Knickerbrook, who's going to prevail in that fight. Odo sweeps around the outside and pulls off a beautiful move on Lucas Vieira to take the lead of this race. Vieira also hit that curb pretty badly on the outside of the corner. That may have sacrificed his run a teeny tiny bit, but still Ryan Odo with a awesome move to take the lead of this race. Coming to the white flag this time by Odo is going to be the leader, Vieira in P2, and really you can't wear out on either of these drivers. They have a fantastic shot to grab the victory in this sprint, and yeah, you can see that white flag is in the air. One more lap to go, and here was a replay of that amazing overtake.
Yeah, just got a great run. This was I think the first one. Yeah, so this is the first one. Looks like maybe that Vieira just went a little deep coming in through Knickerbrook and gave Odo the opening on the inside. He's able to make the pass, but then he catches the curb on the inside of that corner, and it gives Vieira a chance to make another run, and just the last of the late breakers on the outside of the lodge, and another good pass back. However, that didn't last very long as Odo gets the run down the backstretch and takes the outside line, and just it's bravery at this point. Just makes a fantastic move there through Knickerbrook to take that position again.
And things have gone from bad to worse for Lucas Vieira as he's dropped down to P3 with some sort of mistake. I think we're going to have to try and find a replay to see what exactly happened to Lucas Vieira. They were side by side. We're going to wait until the race ends to see exactly what happened to our at one point leader dominating this race. The leader of the championship is going to end this feature in P3, but Ryan Odo, he is going to be the one taking the checkered flag in this sprint race to win the 15-minute affair. Very nicely played from Ryan Odo to take the checkered flag in first. Franco Sanchez in the come from behind result ends up in P2. It's a photo finish right behind Lucas Vieira, who rounds out the podium with Ryland Richard, and John Benlid. Richard is going to end up in fourth with Benlid in fifth. Right behind as well, hard fighting involving Vocal Harmon as well. You can see him still missing the front end of that race car. Lots of drivers still battling hard. That's a very hard fought fight right behind Sanchez. That's actually Fernandez, my apologies. That's Jacqueline and Pires battling very hard at the back end of the circuit. Jacqueline going for a send heading into Knickerbrook. He pitted earlier on in this race, so not a very good one if you're Joel Jacqueline. However, he has put on a pretty good comeback, and it looks like he's going to end up this race in P14 in front of Lucas Pires and on the lead lap as well. So very nicely played from the American. It looks like he is going to be fairly uncontested, coming to take the checkered flag, and these will be the last of the finishers in this race. And here was a replay to see what happened to Vieira heading into Shell Oil's corner. Very hard to get the braking right in these Radical SR10s, but also very hard to get the corner exit right, and he goes for a big sideways drift. That was very comedically cut. Thank you very much, iRacing, for going straight to the warm-up as he was going sideways. That was pretty comedic in the way that iRacing cut that, but no, I mean, we got the gist of what happened. Vieira going for a half spin.
Yeah, just carried just too hard back on the throttle coming out of Shell Oils, and just lost the rear of the car. Pretty straightforward.
That was that was kind of funny, just the way that cut away. Right as we see him go sideways, bink, okay, here's a warm-up session. So I'm not sure if we'd be able to find possibly a whole cut of that replay. We have 5 minutes of warm-up left until we get into that 45-minute long feature race this evening. So we'll try and find that, hopefully, fingers crossed. So hope that the other iRacing gods, oh man, we can't take a look at another angle of that, sadly. So well, we got a good idea as to what happened to Lucas Vieira, and didn't hurt him too much. I don't think he would have been able to challenge Ryan Odo for the win yet again, unless he had a fantastic run coming out of Shell Oil's corner, and he definitely risked it for the biscuit going sideways out of the corner. So yeah, he definitely didn't. He definitely didn't go down swinging.
That's right. Yeah, he was definitely was trying to get that spot back, and just like I said, just overcooked it a little bit coming out of the corner. And which is saying something, because that corner, you know, really, it's difficult to overcook it coming out of there. So much camber built into that corner. But, you know, obviously, you know, could not quite hold on to the rear of the car, and it cost him a position. But, you know, he's going to be starting in a good spot, starting in third for the feature race.
And I think while we're still in this warm-up session, before we get you braced for what could be an odd one, I think we'll take a look at the results, which is also going to be the starting grid for that feature. We'll try and get that load up for you in just a couple of moments' time. It's going to be an odd one for sure, and the driver that's going to be leading them to green is a winner in that sprint, that being Ryan Odo in that 15 car. Very nicely played, and a hard fight as well to win that first race of the evening. Franco Sanchez is going to be joining him on the front row, ends up in second in a come-from-behind result. Lucas Vieira with that small little mistake, he is going to be a man on a mission starting that race in third. Ryland Richard in fourth, John Benlid in fifth, Charles Krasik in P number 6, Hunter Reeve in 7th, J.R. Gregory with a very hard-fought fight ends up in P8, avoiding all the drama and the chaos that happened around him. He's going to be starting this upcoming race in 8th, David Unger in 9th, and Andy Vocal is going to round out the top 10.
Yeah, Eric Carbon in 11th, Cedric Oyan in 12th, Adrian Fernandez 13th, Joel Jacqueline 14th, Luis Pires in 15th, Diego Zuccarelli 16th, and Tyler Vickery in 17th.
So that is the result from the sprint race and the starting grid that we're going to have for the feature coming up in about 2 minutes time. So this warm-up session has absolutely flown by with less than 2 minutes, in fact, left on the clock. And I want to bring up one main point. Usually when it comes time for these feature races, the main point that we like to bring up is the pit stops. Those are huge in these. They have to deal with the pit stops, and we've seen races decided all throughout this season, mainly down to pit stops, and also people having issues during those pit stops, whether it be not clicking off the tire change button or whatever it may be. The pit stops are very important. Here, it's going to be a bit different. I did some investigative journalism earlier on today, and I heard, I'm not going to call it the fallout, but there was some discussion after the Radical European Championship race earlier on today, and pretty much the pervasive thought is that these drivers can pit on lap 1 and make it the rest of the 45-minute race on a single tank of gas. They're limited to 66% on the fuel, but they can still make it all the way. This track doesn't really burn up a whole lot of gas. So will we see a driver go for that strategy, Charles? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's if they were watching the European side of it, maybe somebody will give it a shot. Maybe somebody said something in I'm sure they have a Discord for this series. Maybe somebody said something there. If you think that you need to just come in and go ahead and get your pit stop out of the way, yeah, it might be worth a try. I don't know that any of the front runners are going to do that. Does that also mean that they can go until the final lap of the race and pit on the white flag? I mean, math is math. So if they can come in after lap 1, they should be able to come in with 1 to go.
Well, that could be an interesting storyline to follow.
I mean, I don't know. So, would you want to come in early or would you want to come in late? So I don't know the answer to that question. It may be that most of these guys are saying, let me just see if I can survive the 45-minute race, and then we'll run to pit stop when it's time to make a stop. I don't know that it buys you anything to come in after 1 lap, to be fair.
Will they go for that loophole, or are they going to go for a normal strategy? We'll just have to wait and see. I will say one point on these drivers trying to figure that out. The European channel on the Radical SimRacing Discord server is only 1 channel away from the Americas one, so they'd definitely be able to find it out a few clicks away. But speaking of, we're a few moments away from getting this feature race started. 45 minutes in total. It's going to be our pole sitter Ryan Odo leading them to green, Franco Sanchez in P2, Lucas Vieira in P3, Rylan Richard in 4th, John Benlid in 5th, Charles Krasik in 6th, Hunter Reeve in 7th, J.R. Gregory in P number 8, David Unger in 9th, Indy Vocal in 10th, Eric Harmon in P11, Cedric Oihan in P number 12, and you can see the rest of the starters. Oh, we already have a spinner off the line. That's a number 53 car going for a disastrous start, but meanwhile, it's a very tough start for all these drivers. That's Lucas Vieira and Franco Sanchez being and banging. Doors hang through turn number 1. Odo in the midst of that as well, also getting a hip check. All of these drivers are pushing it to the absolute limit, and they may get bit by the chrome horn. Vieira running wide through turn at number 2. He's going to lose out on a whole lot of time. Possibly may lose out on a podium position. Yes, he does. And in a very dramatic start, it's still Lucas Vieira leading them, heading through the island bend at this first lap of the race. Ryan Odo in 2nd, and John Benlid with a fantastic start, up 2 spots already. He is in P number 3. Franco Sanchez at this point, he really just needs to dust himself off and try and make up the lost time that he just had. Meanwhile, Vieira and Odo back together. They're going to be side by side, hanging to Knickerbrook on lap number 1. Odo, understandably so, backing out of it. That was a very smart call to make. Meanwhile, closing on that storyline that we saw at the very beginning, Charles Krasik was a one that went for the spin right off the line. That was a disastrous start for the driver of the 53 car, but meanwhile at the front, it's still Vieira in the lead, Odo in 2nd, and John Benlid in P3, and probably the most dramatic start we've seen all season.
Yeah, it was, if you've ever driven a race that has a standing start, you've probably seen that before, and it's basically just him just popping the clutch and lighting the rears up, and then the car just basically turns sideways, and that's really all there was to it, as you just see it right there. And around he goes. I was going to say, I was interested to watch Zuccarelli, because he was running up close to the top 5 before that incident happened, and so he was going to be starting in the back, so we wanted to see what he was going to do at the start. And he did disappoint. He's up 6 positions already, just from the little bit of shenanigans we had there at the start of the race. So he's doing a great job trying to work his way back up to the order and trying to get up to a position that he was probably, where his speed should normally have him without the incident. So we'll see if we can keep an eye on him and see how much further he can progress during the course of the race.
Now, usually I don't like to pester our producer Josh because he always does a fantastic job of some drivers doing some rally action on the exit of Knickerbrook, hitting that deadly curb on the outside, which is pretty much just a rocky outcrop disguised as a ripple strip. Some drivers getting caught out by that at the beginning of the race. I think that's Luis Pires enjoying gaining a spot. That was David Unger. That was very slow on exit to Knickerbrook. But Josh, I have a real quick question. Could we briefly ride on board with one of these cars? Because I want to see something. When we took a look at that replay of Charles Krasik, it looked like he was on it looked like he was in 6th gear. So I'm curious whether or not iRacing is trying to block what we can actually see from these cars. Now you can see what gears they're in all the time. Yeah, you can see Andy Vogel downshifting down to 3rd, coming around turn number 3. So Charles Krasik starting this race in 6th. Maybe tried to go for some sort of weird alternative strategy to try and start these cars, limit the wheel spin as much as he could, or maybe he just was like, yeah, well, I don't like being in the mid-pack hanging into turn number 1, so I'm just going to spin it off the line. Not sure what happened there, Charles. I'll be brutally honest.
Yeah, so, well, I will say this. One of my guilty pleasures is driving the IR01, the iRacing, I guess, formula car, fantasy car, whatever you want to call it. And you can't start that car in 1st gear. You have to start the car in like 3rd, just because there's so much power. You just can't get the clutch release done properly. Oh, as we see an incident there between J.R. Gregory and I believe that was Zuccarelli.
Zuccarelli.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I guess.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's very close there. I guess that the good news is Zuccarelli's got another 40 minutes of racing to try and make up some more spots, but obviously not necessarily the place he wanted to be, trying to retrieve his car out of the grass. So yeah, I don't know if I don't think 6 would have been the right answer to that question to answer your question, but it wouldn't surprise me that some of these guys are doing the standing start in the higher gear other than 1st.
Well, I mean, from my experience driving in the officials, as we see Diego Zuccarelli's broken and battered Radical SR10 yet again, that's an interesting interpretation of aerodynamic regulations, it must be said. Here is what caused it. Zuccarelli trying to get the move done on JR, heading into turn number 10 of Druids. I think he just, I can't really... I don't know about you, Charles. I can't really assign blame to either one of those drivers. I think that was just 2 cars merging into the same piece of real estate on the racetrack. And you could see just the tail end of that very close call with David Unger. But getting back on track and talking about that incident, can't really blame either of those drivers for that. Just looked like a racing deal.
It did look like a racing deal to me. It looked like Zuccarelli had a good run on the inside, and Gregory was just trying to arc his car into the corner. And it was just, right front versus, left rear. And, sometimes that will send your car in the never land. And sometimes it'll just kind of be a bump and then he continue on racing. So
we hope to get back to live action here soon. We're following Cedric Oyahan, who's had a pretty interesting start of this race thus far. He's currently running in 10th and has actually he's actually gained 2 spots, which is pretty much the norm. We've had 3 drivers gain 2 spots thus far: Cedric Oyahan, Adrian Fernandez, and Lucas Vieira, all up 2 spots. I must say, Eric Harmon, who's involved in that incident during the sprint race, he's made up 7 spots thus far, so they're very nicely played for the driver of the 617 car, currently running in 4th. Another point to mention as well, no drivers have really come into the pits outside of Krasik coming in for an early pit call, but besides him, no other driver has come into the pits so far outside of himself and Diego Zuccarelli coming in, obviously, to repair that damage. So no drivers coming in for that early pit call.
Yeah, nobody took the 1 lap challenge, but Krasik did come in. We didn't really see it. We saw the spin, but we didn't see if there was a lot of contact between him and any other cars on the starting grid, or if he maybe spun the car in and nosed into the barrier. So probably smart for him to come in early, if get the fast repair taken care of, get the car back out on the track. So he waited till lap 4. Zuccarelli came in on lap 3, did the same thing, obviously, after his incident with Gregory. And then we're back on board here with Harmon running in 4th. A little bit of a gap, about 3-second gap up to Sanchez in 3rd. And then, of course, Vieira and Odo up there in the front, separated by a half second. Looks like that'll be the norm for the remainder of the race, unless something really strange happens.
And we've seen some very strange stuff thus far. In all the drama and action we've had thus far, there's only been, well, it was only going to be 2 drivers who have maintained their spot between the start and the finish. That has just changed as J.R. Gregory going side by side with Hunter Reeve heading their way into Knickerbrook right now. Those 2 were the only ones outside of Diego Zuccarelli and Tyler Vickery who had stayed in the same spot that they started in. However, that just changed as J.R. Gregory makes up 1 spot to move his way into P7, and Reeve loses out on a spot to dip his way into P number 8. It's been very, very dramatic thus far. Lots of movers and shakers thus far, and there's only been 1 driver to retire thus far, that being Tyler Vickery, who must have had some sort of incident that we did not see. He only completed 3 laps, I believe. So Tyler Vickery, a very rough evening for the American.
Yeah, Tyler comes up there and does his best, and so, seems like the little sprint race usually catches him out and ends up hurting him. But then he usually comes back and does really well in the feature, and just not so lucky tonight. Oh, there we go. Just inside curb, lose the car. Just some of these older, especially it seems like the British tracks. We talk about the updated off track friction modeling. It just seemed like some of these older British tracks, for whatever reason, just seem like that the cars don't want to stop quite as well as they do at some of the other locations.
Yeah, this has been a pretty recurring occurrence. That's a very nice phrase from me on this broadcast. It's been a recurring occurrence at these British tracks. We just saw that really twice in one night for Tyler Vickery. Very similar incidents, clipping that inside curb and just peeling him off to the barrier. Sadly for Tyler Vickery, he is out of it. He has left the session. He is done for this evening. We have 16 cars left out on track, and they're currently being led by the same drivers that are running in the top 3 towards the end of race number 1. However, Odo and Vieira actually swapping some spots currently with Sanchez a little bit farther back, so status quo compared to what we had in the sprint race. However, much longer, 30 more minutes for these drivers to try and handle. It's going to throw a huge curveball towards these drivers. We're going through the field there. Currently Adrian Fernandez, the last car inside the top 10, but Ryan Odo has taken the lead of the race over Lucas Vieira in P number 2. You can see those two separated by barely any air, less than a quarter of a second separating them, coming out of Shell Oil's corner, now careening their way into Knickerbrook. It looks like Vieira is actually backing out of it, understandably so. We just crossed over the 10-minute mark in this lap, so really, if you're Lucas Vieira, you don't want to risk it at all. It's like if you're running in that 15-minute race we had earlier on this evening, yeah, you should definitely race hard 10 minutes in, but at this stage, it's not really worth it. But as I say that, they are very, very close on corner exit, coming out of Druids, heading their way into Lodge Corner now. But if you're Lucas Vieira, there's really no understandable reason to risk it so early on.
No, I don't think so, and it may be the fact that you're right. Is there's no sense in battling for the race win when there's still 35 minutes of driving left to do. Just a nice move by Odo to the inside there through 2 and 3, makes that pass look pretty easy. Vieira did not fight him very hard, so Vieira can just now ride in the back and run second place and do a little fuel saving. And, for that little short pit stop they're going to have, it's going to be that much quicker as we see Benelid in a battle there with, is that Fernandez? Or Jacqueline? Okay, thank you very much to the Josh in my ear helping me spot there. So, so Benelid and Jacqueline battling for P11. They're about 2.5 seconds behind Fernandez in 10th. And it seemed like just these 2 cars for the time being. You see Unger in the background there trying to do a little bit to make up that gap. And if these guys keep fighting through corners, Unger will be up on them and make that a 3-car battle in no time.
I gotta say, Unger, despite the fact he has that, I guess it was like a digital camo, I guess would probably be the correct technical term to describe the paint scheme that David Unger has on that race car. I know Red Bull did something very similar to that with their F1 car back in 2014, but despite the fact that David Unger has tried to obscure his car the best he possibly can, it hasn't really worked because he has been the center of attention throughout this race. Outside of the battle for the lead, which is still very close with Odo and Vieira separated by about 0.3 of a second coming out of turn number 3 at the beginning of lap 10, Unger, he has been in the midst of everything, had a very close call towards the beginning of this race as well with the stricken car of Zuccarelli. Unger at this rate, he's probably gotten more airtime than our leader so far in this race. He's just been at the center. He's been pretty much at the center of the universe here at this Radical Americas race.
Yeah, for sure. He's been in the middle of all of it, where whether it hasn't been really his fault, he just happens to be around, so he's getting a lot of screen time, which is nothing wrong with that. It's always good to get some screen time on these races. That's one of the reasons that a lot of these guys drive, just because they want to be part of a broadcast and get their picture and their car up on the screen and let everybody have a good look, and then compete for potentially some prizes and things like that.
David Unger, the Australian driver, I wouldn't say sticking out like a sore thumb because that sounds a little bit rude, but the Australian driver running in the Americas Championship. What time would it be in Australia? I guess it would be like mid-afternoon for him. I'm going to consult my clock app here.
I'm going to say it's going to be somewhere still early in the morning, somewhere between like 6 and 9 a.m., somewhere in that neighborhood, I think. The team that I'm a part of we have an Aussie who will come drive with us occasionally, especially for the special events. And I think he is like 10 hours behind me or something like that. So it's or 10 hours behind, 10 hours ahead. One of those, maybe 10 hours ahead. I'm not sure. So yeah, maybe it's Monday morning for him. So yeah, it is early. It's a really early day of racing for Mr. Unger.
Well, he's definitely enjoying his morning. He's been in the midst of a whole lot. He's been the center of attention throughout this broadcast thus far, and considering how this race meeting has been throughout that sprint, which was very chaotic, and this feature that's seen some drama as well, I don't think things are going to change between now and the checkered flag coming out in over 30 minutes time. I think there's a change for position here with John Benlid and Fernandez side by side heading through Knickerbrook. It looks like Benlid is going to get that move done to slot his way into P number 10, but right now Jacqueline feeling really racy with Fernandez as well. These three very, very close, but as I say that, Bentley is actually starting to pull away. He wants nothing to do with that hard battling involving Adrian Fernandez, and right as we were mentioning him, you can see Unger in the back of shot as well. So the action is surrounding him, and we haven't like bribed him or anything to be with us here this evening, but I mean, I think we may need to do something like that because he has brought a whole lot of attention and a whole lot of flames so far in this race, and he's doing it all at either 9, 10, or it'd be 9, 10, or 11 a.m. for him, regardless, well, depending on where he is in Australia. Still early in the morning, though, it must be said, to be doing a race like this against all these drivers that are running later in the evening. He's running in the morning. He is well refreshed and is going to be having a spot of lunch after this race is over.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, as we get eyes here on Gregory and Hunter Reeve battling for P7 overall. Just JR doing a really good job of just maintaining his pace and staying up there just at the, just inside the top 10, starting at 8th and has managed to stay up, in 7th. I think he's just basically swapped positions with Reeve during the course of this race. Kind of watching Zuccarelli's now tried to climb to the back of Pyrrhus to get that spot back, and he's just JR's doing a good job. Lap times are pretty consistent. Looks like him and Hunter are running basically identical laps. It's just made a little mistake there coming out of 1. Gives the spot back up. But I think that he's in a position that he'll keep battling there with Hunter, provided he doesn't make any more errors there. We get a look now at Zuccarelli coming up to the back of Pyrrhus. Gonna try and make his way around, looking to the inside, not quite enough there. But, you know, Zuccarelli's doing a good job. He's running a much quicker pace than Pyrus, and as well as several other cars up in the grid. So, you know, he's already got his pit stop made as he's making his way around to the right. Gives Pyrus plenty of room. Takes the inside going into one, makes that pass, makes it stick. Yep, perfect exit coming out of one there. So he's up to 14th, and he's got a chance to make up a few more spots before it's all said and done. He's not just terribly too far back. I think he's got a potential. You know what? I take that back. Well, you know, with pit stops, they still got to make. So it is potential that he can get 2 or 3 spots out of this before it's all said and done.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you something in a similar ballpark to what you just said, Charles. Do you think Zuccarelli has a good shot to finish this race in the top 10 as a driver running in the top 10? Cedric Oulton comes in for his 1 pit stop in this race about 18 minutes in. So that's going to allow Zuccarelli to move his way up into P13, I believe, depending on how long Oulton is stopped in his box. We're still following him. You can see him flashing his lights. Stopped in the pit box, 13.2 seconds, and he's out and away, so a 10th quicker than Zuccarelli spent in his box. So we'll see at maybe close between those two on pit exit. Looking at that now, and Zuccarelli spent a whole lot of time down pit lane, 40.5 he spent down in the pit lane. So you can see that compared to Oulton, about 7 seconds separating those two in terms of how long they spent down the pit lane. As some hard battling continuing here with Vieira, it looked like Odo was maybe trying to eye up a move heading into the second to last corner of Lodge Bend. I think these two cooling off a teeny tiny bit, maybe seeing those pit stops near and starting to feel a bit more racy as Odo sets the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, Odo with a great lap there, 1:19.65. I think that was faster than the pole time for qualifying. Zuccarelli, I think, has a chance to pick up a few more spots. I think Unger and Jacqueline are going to be maybe Fernandez. I'm saying Fernandez, Unger, Jacqueline. Those 3 may be, just because it's going to be about a 30-second stoppage time or time lost on track. So those guys may be in the sights of Zuccarelli to get that spot. Looking at Oulton's time, I have to get a check. His fastest lap was a 1:21.47. Zuccarelli's fastest lap was a 20.8. So he is going to be able to make up some time on Oulton as well. I don't know if he's going to be able to make up 13 seconds now that Oulton's actually pitted. So we'll have to just wait and see. But there's potential for him to pick up a couple more spots after the pit cycle's done.
There is plenty of opportunities for all of these drivers to try and make up some spots. Zuccarelli, he's going to be a man on a mission. All these drivers at this stage are really men on missions. We're 6 rounds into this season. We're over the halfway mark now, so all these drivers going to look to try and gain some time. And speaking of gaining some time, they're gaining to the back of Pyrez right in front. So Vieira going to have to deal with lap traffic. Odo going to have to deal with traffic as well. And I dealt with some traffic as well in my experience doing the officials, which is saying something because those races are fairly short. I mean, they're about 20 minutes long. Very difficult trying to deal with the traffic. However, thankfully, for the sakes of Vieira and Odo, it's getting out of the way was Pyrez, so pulling off the other sportsman role, and I think he'll get out of the way of Franco Sanchez going down this back flat out blast towards the midsection of the lap. Yeah, you can see pretty uncontested from Franco Sanchez. Good sportsmanship there from Pyrez. Much better than the treatment I got from lap traffic in the officials, and I'll just leave it at that. Anyways, we could get back and talk about this racing. I was going to say that maybe lap traffic could sway Vieira coming down pit lane, but he has a decent amount of time before he reaches the back of Krasik's car in the not too distant future. But will Vieira or Odo come in the next 5 minutes? And if they do come down pit lane, well, when they do come down pit lane, I should say, are they going to come together?
Yeah, that's a good question. It just depends on what, how confident each driver is navigating that lap traffic. They are going to come up on Krasik here pretty soon. They're about a second a lap faster than Krasik currently. So as you see him coming around through Island Bend, got a car off. Yep, looks like Pyrez has actually towed. It was a good shot, good call by Josh there, our producer. He noticed that we had a red. Looks like Pyrez is actually towed back to the pit. So there's an incident there that we could probably review if Josh can find the replay, which I'm sure he can. Yep, so we have Pyrez coming down in to Lodge. Yep, just
touch from Harmon, I think that was.
Yeah, I think it was Harmon. I think he just checked up. I think he was trying to stay the inside and get out of the way. And maybe just checked up too much, caught the inside curb, which didn't help matters. And then just some of these corners are just they're so tight. There's really only one really good line through there, so it's hard to really make a pass, even with a slower car that's trying to facilitate it. Sometimes it's just better to just kind of run your race and stay on your line and let the car that's faster make their way around. Kind of the same thing you would see maybe in a multi-class race.
The pit stops are near, and both of these drivers realize that that's exactly why Ryan Odo forced the issue and took the lead of the race from Lucas Vieira. Meanwhile, Franco Sanchez and Eric Harmon, who are running in P3 and P4, they have come down pit lane. So some of the first drivers running inside the top 5 have made that call to come in to the pits. That has relinquished their spots to Andy Vocal and Ryland Richard. Vocal, we haven't talked about him throughout this broadcast thus far. We haven't actually talked about him too much. In this race, at least, I should say. He's running a P3, top of the AM drivers as things stand currently. Very nicely put together race for the American. We'll see if he can hang on to that top AM position between now and the end of this race. Ryan Odo leading them heading in to Druids on this 18th lap of the race, and with Sanchez and Harmon coming down pit lane. Harmon, understandably so, after that contact he had with the lap car of Pyrez, probably picked up some front end damage. Will these drivers respond, or are they going to stay out yet another lap? Yes, they are. Yep. So Ryan Odo and Vieira again continuing to stretch their fuel, and we mentioned this during that warm-up session about 24 minutes ago, Charles. I mentioned these drivers would be able to make it to the end if they pit on lap 1, but you brought up the opposite could be true. These drivers could run pretty much entirely up until that white flag, then come down pit lane for a quick splash and dash. So maybe that's a strategy call that Odo and Vieira are leaning towards.
Yeah, it may be so. And I know they're coming up. They're going to have to make the decision pretty quick, because I think I was looking at them on screen, and they were basically about a corner behind Kresick. So they'll be coming up on that lap traffic very, very quickly. So they're going to have to make up their minds if they're going to try and get into the pits. They've got a very nice gap. They've got a 14-second gap back to Vocal. Richard is only a second behind him. And then there's another big 11-second gap back to Reeve in 5th, who's got Gregory and Benlit in tow. So there's an open area to run if you want to come into the pit. You should be able to slot back into a gap fairly easily. Like I said, it's about a 30-second loss of track position. So they're going to come out right around, Reeve, Gregory, Benlit. I saw somebody go in. That's Vieira in the pits. Oh, that was very close. Did he hit the wall?
Oh, that would be disastrous if he did, but it was definitely close. You could see the puff of smoke from Vieira. Thankfully, he's now out in the pit box, so if he did hit the wall, he will be able to pick up that fast repair. We're riding on board with him. Making that decision to come down pit lane is Lucas Vieira, and a big sideways snap. Got very, very close to that pit wall. That was some sensational driving from Lucas Vieira to keep it out of the wall, because if he did, that certainly would have slowed him down a whole lot. Instead, he had a very quick stop, 11.7, stopped in the box, and 32.0 out and away on pit lane. So Lucas Vieira, full commitment on pit entry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's about as hard as you can come in without getting that pit lane speeding penalty on entry. So now he's got to dispatch Gregory pretty quick, because obviously he doesn't want these cars that are running fourth, fifth to hold him up. He wants to be able to run a really good out lap to get his tires back up to temp and not lose any time potentially to Odo, who's up there running by himself.
Oh, and you can see Sanchez already trying to close up that gap between himself and Vieira, as Vieira puts a move on J.R. Gregory heading into Knickerbrook. Sanchez got hurt by that a teeny tiny bit. It was about a 2.5 second gap when that round of pit stops started, but now it's about 4 seconds separating Franco Sanchez and Lucas Vieira. Odo has stayed out yet again. Meanwhile, Andy Vogel has stopped in his box. You can see him there in the number 34 car. We'll see how long he stopped in pit lane. That's another entry down in the pits, that being John Benlid. So the pit stops really beginning. It was a small little trickle at first, but it is now turned into a flood with Unger coming in as well. Odo, this is an interesting call from Ryan Odo to stay out as long as he has. It seems like the overcut worked for Lucas Vieira compared to Franco Sanchez. Will it work the other way around for Ryan Odo?
Yeah, don't know. It's going to be one of those. It just really depends on traffic for those two cars. I think their pace was pretty identical for the first half of the race. It's not like that either Sanchez, Vieira, or Odo was able to just go out and just check out from the other two. So yeah, it's going to be a matter of how each car deals with the traffic that they're in before Odo makes his stop.
And Vieira has been dealing with the traffic absolutely sensationally. He's put a move done on Hunter Reeve heading through Knickerbrook this time by, put a move on J.R. Gregory not very long ago. So Lucas Vieira, he is cutting it through like a hot knife through butter, and now he has clean air. He is going to enjoy that clean air as much as a draft in these Radical SR10s is important. You also want to have some clean air, and right now Lucas Vieira has that as Hunter Reeve and J.R. Gregory come down pit lane together. So the two drivers have been battling very hard all throughout this race, coming in at pretty much identical times. We'll see if they also have identical times down in the pit lane. I doubt they will very highly. You can see a little bit off kilter for the both of them in terms of their time. Hunter Reeve out and away 11.2. J.R. Gregory, meanwhile, 13.0. It's a little bit slow for J.R. It must be said. He's going to lose a teeny tiny bit of time compared to Hunter Reeve. However, in terms of their actual time down in the pits, Gregory only 1 second back of Hunter Reeve. I think he just had absolute full commitment on pit entry, and that may have been the reason why he closed that gap a teeny tiny bit. However, with a slightly slower stop, it has all come to naught. Ryan Odo in, the race leader of the race, has come in for his one and only stop with about 15.5 minutes left to go on the clock. How's it going to shake out for Odo? Has he hit all his marks on pit lane? You can see Vieira, that's exiting turn number 10 of Druids right now. He's heading down under Warwick Bridge, heading his way into Lodge Corner before he goes through Deer Leap. Is it going to be Odo smelling like a rose? Is it going to be Vieira smelling like a rose? Out and away for Odo. Very quick down pit lane. It's got to be close between himself and Vieira, though. Not a whole lot of time separating them in terms of their time down pit lane, but Odo is going to jump ahead with the lead of the race yet again. This time about a second separating those two. However, Ryan Odo, he didn't have to change tires. These drivers don't have to change tires in the stops. However, with his time down pit lane, only 30 seconds, it cools those tires enough whereby these first laps coming out of pit lane on those already worn and used and beaten and battered tires, it's going to be tough for Ryan Odo to try and maintain that gap on this out lap.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is I think Vieira is going to be able to track him back down, and it's going to be game on again for the last 15 minutes of the race. It does take a little bit of time to get back into your rhythm, get the tires back up to the proper temp. So yeah, it won't surprise me if these guys are battling at the end of the race, going down to the checkers to see who's going to win. And so I think that's basically everybody's has pitted. So pit stops are done. Odo, Vieira, Sanchez, your top three. Harmon is there in fourth, hanging just ahead of Richard, Vogel, and then a big gap back to Reeve, Benlid, and Gregory. That's going to be a nice three-car battle to the end of the race. Zuccarelli up to 11th, so now he's got some work to do. He's about 4.5 seconds behind Oayan to get into that top 10.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask the question that I was going to ask before that fight between Odo and Vieira absolutely heated up not very long ago. Will Zuccarelli end up in the top 10? He still has a whole lot of stuff left to do outside and towards the tail end of that top 10. It is very spread out with about 4 seconds separating Oulton and Zuccarelli. What do you think the chances are that Zuccarelli is going to squeak out of this race with a top 10?
You know, I'm looking at it. As long as he doesn't make a mistake, I think whoa, as we see Bentley around and into the barrier. As we talk about people making mistakes, and then you got Bentley there, just looked like he just maybe caught the outside, tried to correct, and
be careful and rejoin.
Maybe overcorrected there as like a team car went by him. So is that Oulton? Yeah, it was. So to me, it looked like they've got the same paints. Yeah, they do. So so now you've got Oulton has jumped up to P9. So now Bentley is now damaged and is just in front of Zuccarelli. So I'm going to amend what I was going to say and say I think the chances are pretty good that he's going to get in the top 10.
Oh, how the tables can turn here in the Radical Americans Championship. In the span of, well, is it 30 seconds? We're like, oh, yeah, he has a 5-second gap. He's going to have to work like hell to try and grab a top 10. And then John Benlid, unfortunate for him, it must be said, because he was putting together a very good drive. It just goes off the track and spins yet again, trying to get it going back in the right direction. And now he's going to be a sitting duck compared to Zuccarelli. Those two separated by only 4, actually teetering around 0.4 of a second at this stage. That gap is definitely going to diminish, and it has diminished now down to 0.3 of a second. So Zuccarelli, he's going to be feeling really, really racy. I guess the question is now, Charles, will he be able to end up in P9?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, we'll see, but he was actually gaining on Bentley about a 0.5 second a lap. So on Oulton about a 0.5 second a lap, as we see Bentley taking way too much of that inside curb there in turn 1. So he was gaining on Oulton even before that. He has been tracking him down. So, you know, he's still got a chance to get up there and get that. So he's got to clear Bentley here pretty quick. Bentley backs out very smartly. That's not a good place to try and make a pass island. Just too many things that can go wrong there. So Bentley very wise to just say, you know what, I've already got enough damage to the car. I don't need any more. And so that gives Zuccarelli a clear run up to challenge Oulton.
Trust me when I say that turn number 4 island bend around this track is sketchy enough single file. So understandably so, Bentley backs out of it. I'm curious if he possibly had a slowdown after running wide out of turn number 1. The track limits are fairly unforgiving at this track. Really no asphalt runoff to speak of. It's just grass and gravel. That's the main component. Another one as well. Turn 1 is tricky. It's in that kind of midsection between medium and slow speed. You have to brake forward. You have to brake a whole lot in these Radical SR10s to try and get it woed up, but it's also pretty fast, and you got to keep the downforce going on the front end and the front splitter of these Radical SR10 cars. And Vieira really not liking the dirty air off the back of Ryan Odo's car, running wide through Knickerbrook. Thankfully for his sakes, he keeps it going in a straight line, which, considering how many drivers have been called out by the extra slippery grass here at Oulton Park, that is unbelievable. The fact he kept that going in a straight line, and it looked like there wasn't even a wiggle behind the wheel of that SR10. Very nicely played from the Brazilian.
Yeah, it was a great job of driving in that corner, and I've raced here enough to know that that corner, if you can get your wheel straight, your front wheel straight, you can get back on the throttle pretty hard without the chance of that spinning. But you know, if you're still trying to, you know, work the exit of that corner and you got any turn in, it's just that much more difficult to get that back on the power. So great job by Vieira, and yeah, it looks like it's a little understeery when you get behind another car that close, going through those corners.
Some have described this car as being understeery as is, so the fact they're dealing with understeer behind the dirty air of another car is really, really tough. Andy Vocal, meanwhile, he has put together a very strong drive. He's currently the leader in that AM category. The pit stops have worked out incredibly well for him, up 4 spots from where he started this race, and he has a very wide gap between himself and Hunter Reeve for P1 and P2 in the AM category. And I must say, our colleague JR, and I'm definitely not just saying this just because we worked together for quite some time on the Radical, at one point it was a Radical Racing Challenge, now the Radical Esports Cup. This has been a very impressive debut from JR, running P3 in this AM race. It's very, very good. Of course, some drivers have gone off the track around him, including Cedric Oyahan, but still very, very nicely played from JR. Even keeping it on the track, keeping it clean, has helped him a whole lot in this race. So P8 overall and P3 in the M category would be a very impressive debut.
Yeah, absolutely. As you see, we got Zuccarelli now working his way around Oulton. Yep, so that's the pass for P number 9. So, and they're continuing on. So Zuccarelli's next target would be J.R. Gregory, but he's 12 seconds back with 8 minutes to go. I'm not really sure that's going to be feasible. He is running a bit quicker than JR, but you know, we're talking about a second a lap. Just not enough laps left in order to make that time up. Just will throw out there that we do have Vieira has gotten the fastest lap of the race on the last lap, 1:19.53, which actually equals the fastest lap for Odo, but it's so it's a little bit quicker by, as you see there with the thanks for that, Josh, 0.03 of a second quicker over the 2 fastest laps of the race.
And they're still pretty close. About to start lap 29 right now is Ryan Odo. Not a whole lot of time left to go in this race in terms of lap count and the timer as well. Odo's going to be feeling the burn. He's feeling the pressure. He runs wide. Coming out of turn number 1, these drivers are absolutely racking up those incident points like they're going out of style, mainly from the off tracks alone. These drivers pushing the track limits to their absolute limits, and you can't really blame them for doing that, as Pyra is very, very slow on the back end of the circuit. Actually, no, that's the front end of the circuit, coming out of turn number 3 before Island Bend of turn 4, maybe just allowing Sanchez to go by in a very opportune time for the Peruvian driver. He's put together a good drive as well, running effectively in no man's land in P3. However, a podium is still a very impressive result in these races. Ryan Odo doing a little bit of weaving down the hilltop straightaway towards the middle section of this lap. He's starting to feel the pressure from Vieira. He's maybe trying any sort of way to possibly pressure Vieira into a mistake in these Radical SR10s. It's one thing to just be in the zone in terms of having the right tire temperatures, using the right amount of curb, running the right racing line, but the mental capacity to try and drive these Radical SR10s, especially as fast as these drivers are, maybe mind games could play a role in how things shake out across these final 6 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, it'll be, I'm sure Vieira will be doing, you know, all the pro tricks behind, you know, giving a little headlight flash, you know, showing the nose in a couple of corners, seeing if he can get a late break going, just trying to force Odo into a little mental mistake. So as we see there, wow, that's a lot of off tracks. I'm not sure that's quite right, because I'm not sure, is there a penalty for drive-through penalty here for a certain number of off tracks? I will say this: the SDK software uses a very distinct set of criteria to determine off tracks, and some of these tracks that are in iRacing don't have the same criteria. So you may see where they say, you know, the car is over halfway over a white line, and using GPS to determine where the car is on the track. Sometimes doesn't always equal out the same way between SDK and iRacing, so I won't fault him for being a little bit off. I've seen that before. So yeah, it's a look Vieira looking to the inside. Yes, just kind of what I was talking about, just showing the nose a little bit, maybe trying to play a little bit late on the brakes, just trying to force Odo into a mistake on his own. Makes it much easier to make that pass than having to do all the hard work yourself. So we'll see if this continues, or if Odo's able to just keep the car clean for the last 4 minutes or so of this race.
And this is Cedric Oyahan, the last driver inside the top 10, and you can see on these Radical SR10 race cars, the headlights are on, so the sun is coming down at Oulton Park, and there's no trackside lights. Thankfully, there's only 4 minutes left to go on the clock, so they won't have to worry about visibility too much. Riding on board with Cedric Oyahan on the exit of Knickerbrook, you can see that absolute killer curb on the outside. Those drivers have hit that so much, you'd expect it to be completely worn smooth after the racing action we've had so far this evening. However, it is not the case. But up at the north end of the field, it was less than a tenth of a second separating Ryan Odo and Lucas Vieira just a few moments ago. Those two very, very close. That's coming out of Knickerbrook, careening their way into Druids of turn number 10. Vieira on the inside, Odo on the outside, side by side through one of the fastest and most challenging corners on this track. Odo still holds off the challenge, and with those headlights on, these drivers are getting into their heads a lot more. Ryan Odo, he's seeing Lucas Vieira. He can't blink him out because he's seeing the headlights, and maybe Vieira may try and do some headlight flashing. I don't know, maybe I'm just a dirty driver, but if I was locked steady in a very close fight with the sun coming down in these Radical SR10s, I would be flashing and spamming the headlight button like it was going out of style. But Vieira actually losing a little bit of time in the opening sector of this lap. We're seeing these drivers, you can see the understeer playing a huge role. These tires, they're not worn down to the canvas towards the end of these races. However, they're definitely not brand new tires towards the end of these races as well. They're struggling for grip. These cars aren't running as well as they once did. However, they're still trying to push it as hard, if not even harder than they have been throughout this entire race. Thankfully for these two drivers, as you can see with that track map graphic that we have on the screen right now, they don't have to deal with lap traffic. This is just a straight up dogfoot between Ryan Odo and Lucas Vieira, two of the best Radical SR10 driver that the Radical Americas Championship has, and they are pushing it like hell. But that was a little bit too hard of a push for Ryan Odo. Ran wide out of Knickerbrook, and now Vieira's going for it again, heading into Druids, but Odo with an aggressive move around the outside, cuts across Vieira, trying to hold off any sort of challenge, but Vieira's not over yet. Sneaking a wheel down the inside. They're going to be side by side, heading into the second to last corner of Lodge Bend, side by side on corner exit as well. None of these drivers are going to leave no quarters out on the racetrack. These two separated by only 3 points, and nothing separating them as they bang and rough each other up, going down the start finish not so straight away. Ryan Odo fighting like hell to try and hold on to that lead. Lucas Vieira fighting like hell to try and gain the lead, and it's very, very close, but they aren't on the white flag. They will be getting the white flag this time by an Odo with a major snap of oversteer coming out of turn number 3. This is going to be a fantastic finish between these two. Odo and Vieira, they put on a show in that sprint race. They're going to put on a show yet again here in the feature, coming onto the back straightaway for what's going to be the second to last time. Odo's leading them, Vieira in P2. You can see Odo trying to break that slipstream effect, dealing with the bumps down the back straightaway as well, but Vieira sneaking wheel down the inside into Knickerbrook. Odo cutting him off there, saying nope, not around this corner. Slams that door shut. He wants no parts of side-by-side action around Knickerbrook, especially towards the end of a 45-minute race. If one of these drivers were to wreck out, it would be disastrous for their championship contention. They're going to be fighting like hell to try and grab the win, but they also need to add a little bit of common sense. But as a driver myself, I know when you're locked steady in this close of a fight, all sense gets thrown out the window. We are on the white flag. We have one more lap to go and 12 more corners left for these drivers to try and negotiate. That was a huge oversteer snap for Lucas Vieira coming out of the final corner at the end of that second to last lap. Ryan Odo still, he is within striking distance. Vieira and Odo separated by about a quarter of a second coming out of turn number 3 for the final time onto Lakeside, careening their way into Island Bend before they have to slam on the brakes for Shell Oil Corner. Lucas Vieira towards the end of that sprint race, he had a slide coming out of this corner, and he's very aggressive on the brakes. He needs to focus on the exit, has a big sideways snap coming out of the corner, and I think Odo is actually pulling away a teeny tiny bit. Vieira did not get the exit he wanted coming on to the hilltop straightaway for the final time. He's not going to be close enough to try and go for a move heading into Knickerbrook unless he has some stones. No, he backs out of it, and running a little bit wide is Vieira. This is not looking very good for Lucas Vieira. He needs to consolidate his run and maybe go for a balls to the wall, ballsy move into Lodge Corner for the final time. Ryan Odo leading them coming out of Druids. It's one more heavy braking zone, and then he's going to be home sweet home. Ryan Odo pulling away from Lucas Vieira. Those two not close enough to try and pull off a move, and in the the end, Ryan Odo, he's going to pull off the double and win the feature in dramatic fashion over Lucas Vieira in P number 2 after 46 minutes and 35 laps of heart-pumping racing action. Those two end up separated by only a half a second. That was just about the greatest kind of radical SR10 action you can get here on Apex Racing TV. And now we've got Joel Jacklin battling hard. This is between himself and Pyro. Actually, is that Pyros? No, that's Krasik. These two lock steady in a very close fight, and these radical SR10s are fighting hard for the lead. They're fighting hard for the podium spots and the top 10 spots as well. And even outside the top 10 with no hope of winning, these drivers are giving it absolute hell up and down the field. And Charles, that was a dogfight between Ryan Odo and Lucas Vieira. We are absolutely expecting it. We're maybe expecting a little bit of closer stuff on the final lap, but still, that was intense.
It was indeed. Listen, Unger's trying to get a run going here just at the end. See, he's going to make it. Is he going to be close? Oh, I mean, it's so close, but just quite missed out. It was a great battle there with Ojan, Benelid, and Unger there coming down to the line. Ojan able to sneak out, but yeah, great battle. Odo just absolutely just, you know, just steel kind of nerves. Did a great job. It's hard to run from the front like that when you've got such a fast driver behind, putting all kind of pressure on you. But just did a great job, really late on the brakes, carried his speed through the corners, and just really not much that Vieira could have done. He did everything he could have done except wreck him, which is, you know, obviously not what we want to see. But just a great battle, and you see him just get wide, taking every ounce and every inch of track and then some, trying to make the look, trying to get the look to get around. But Odo with a great job riding from the front, running defensive when he had to, and just making the most of the track limits and carrying all the speed through the corners and able to secure the victory. Great race by those two guys.
Well done to all of those drivers. Well done. Racing as hard as they are, but also racing clean. That was absolutely intense. And I think all the cars have taken the checkered flag, so we're going to run through the results from this 35-lap, 45-minute-long feature race. And as Ryan Odo continues to celebrate, flashing those headlights under the darkness here at Oulton Park, we can take a look at the results from a very dramatic round number 7 from the Radical Americas Championship. It's Ryan Odo winning it over Franco Sanchez in P2. Actually, I believe... oh, wait, is this... Oh, was there... Did Vieira pick up a penalty? Vieira picked up a penalty. He's 35.5 seconds back in P number 6. So in the end, Ryan Odo, he was battling very hard, but I guess it all came to naught. Maybe Vieira went off the track too much and picked up some sort of penalty. Either way, I was confused for a second. I was like, are we looking at heat number 1? Are we looking at the sprint race results? Well, no, these are the feature results. Ryan Odo wins it. Franco Sanchez in P2. Ryland Richard grabs a podium in P3. Very nicely played from the driver of the number 69 car. Eric Harmon in 4th. Andy Vogel in 5th, Lucas Vieira in P6, Hunter Reeve in 7th, J.R. Gregory in his debut ends up in P8, Diego Zuccarelli in 9th, and Cedric Oihan is going to round out the top 10.
Yep, John Bindle in 11th, David Unger 12th, Adrian Fernandez in 13th, Joel Jacklin in 14th, Charles Krasik in 15th, Luis Perez in 16th, and Tyler Dickery rounds out the 17 car. And I did go check, and it's a 15X. For a drive-through, so he must have hit it on that last lap. Obviously, you can serve the black flag on the final lap of the race, so it's a time penalty gets added to the end of the event.
Oh, that's absolute heartbreak for Lucas Vieira. That's going to hurt him a whole lot in the championship as well. P3 result, which really should have been a P2 in that sprint. We weren't really thinking that was going to be too big of a deal. However, with that penalty, that P2 in that sprint that ended up being a P3 after that spin, that could have done him a bit more wonders. And Charles, I think we have a Mr. J.R. Gregory waiting in the interview waiting area. And I feel like he's sick and tired of hearing my voice, having done it for multiple seasons on the Radical Esports Cup side of things. So would you like to have a chat with JR?
Oh, sure. I'll talk with JR. Since I don't think I've ever spoken with JR before. JR, This is Charles. Welcome in. Nice start to your endeavors here with your first race with a P8 overall and a P3 in class. So congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much, man. I've been looking forward to this, and as you guys both know, I've been covering these cars on the public server, first the Radical Racing Challenge and now the Radical Esports Cup, covering for some time, and just wanted to get a piece of the action. You could tell these guys are having a blast, and these cars are spectacular, especially at a track like Oulton. So yeah, I'm super happy, as long as I did not get in trouble, and I'm not really sure what happened on that side-by-side contact early on in the feature, so maybe you guys can shed some light on that for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can help you with that. I'm sure that there'll be if there's a stewards inquiry, you'll hear about it before I do. So I did notice that during the feature race, you had a really good battle. I think pretty much the entire race with Hunter Reeve. It looks like you guys were pretty similarly paced, and we're giving it back and forth to each other for 45 minutes. And so I guess the biggest thing is we saw a lot of instances with cars just struggling with the curbs. Was it that big of a challenge for the car over to the curbs on some of those corners?
On some of them, Charles, this car does generate some aero at higher speeds, and it does not like going up on the curbs. If you ride up on the curb, that front splitter comes up off the track, and you lose that downforce, and it doesn't like that. Oh, there's the replay right there. Oh, okay, I feel okay about that. But anyway, sorry. It's you're definitely better off staying off them as much as you can. There are some that are obviously flat and not really a change of height from the track, and they kind of invite you to drive on them. And the ones that are not in that category, you definitely want to stay off of them, because these cars don't like bouncing around, and as I said, they don't like having that aero seal broken against the track. So
yeah, understand. Hey, so congratulations. We're gonna let you go, and I will say this: here's your biggest accomplishment today. You actually kept Ron quiet for 2 minutes, so congratulations for that. So we'll let you go, and if there's anybody you want to thank, please do so now.
You guys, of course, and thanks to this Radical community. They have been so great, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get into this. And Ron has been watching these guys for a long time, so he knows this as well. But when you get them in here in the booths to chat, they're always so cheerful, and you can tell they like each other and respect each other, and they're having a great time out there. And as somebody who kind of searches around for a league to have a lot of fun in, and to have good-natured and respectful competition, this looked like it was going to suit that bill, and it has so far. And so thanks to the Radical folks. And again, if I did something wrong on that side by side, it looked okay to me, but if I did something wrong, I certainly apologize. I don't want to be that guy who's banging doors and hurting feelings on my first appearance. But an absolute blast. I had a blast.
All right. Well, JR, congratulations. Thanks for stopping in with us, talking with us.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Take care.
All right.
And that was our buddy JR and Charles. That was a very nice joke. I'm not even mad. That was very nicely executed. Okay, I think we'll bring in our race
winner.
Yeah. Actually, we'll bring in Ryan Odo to have a quick little chat. Ryan, hard-fought battles in both the sprint and the feature race this evening. It was intense from our perspective in the commentary booth. I'm sure it was triple that from your perspective behind the wheel. Talk us through a very hard-fought day of racing here at Oulton Park.
Yeah, so qualifying went exactly how I didn't want it to go. I was on a really fast lap on the final lap. And when I ended, I was 2/10 up, but I had an off track. I think it was on the second corner, so that caused me to start third place, which is why I was behind Franco. I should have even been in front of Vieira, maybe. And I had to start there. I knew I wasn't going to give up. I love this track. It's one of my favorites, and I wasn't going to let anyone play with me, so I decided in that race that I was going to push harder than I've ever pushed before and make for sure I challenge Vieira, something I haven't done ever. And I think I achieved that, because every single time I've won a race, looking back at it, it's always been because of some sort of misfortune on Vieira's part. Like in Monza, he didn't uncheck the tires, and he also had a spin. In Interlagos, he had contact with another driver, and now I feel like this is my first true race win. So what happened from the start is I got a good exit, which is something I'm very happy about because I normally get bad exits, and it allowed me to pass Franco, which was good because I knew he would hold me up because he's a quick driver, very good racer. In fact, he's a real life racer, and knowing that he would have great racecraft, he'd hold me up. So I got by him luckily and was able to challenge Vieira for the last couple laps. We kept on trading back and forth, and I don't know why, but at this track, for some weird reason, the outside lines on some of these corners are faster. And Vieira, not knowing that, when we went into the first corner, I was able to stay beside him and overtake him, and was able to defend him that way, which allowed me to win Heat 1. And then second race, Vieira got an insanely good start, and so was Franco, and they both passed me, and I backed out of the first corner thinking that something would happen because 3 wide most of the time never goes well, and I was lucky that I did because Vieira went wide. I don't know why, but that would have been me clobbered into the wall, so I got lucky there. I'm sure it isn't his fault. I'm sure it isn't Franco's fault. I bet it was some sort of like mishap. I don't know. But after that, I was luckily again able to get by Franco fairly quickly, and Vieira and I just, from my point of view, I just wanted to gap Franco because I knew if we were to battle, he'd be able to catch up with us and probably start fighting, and that would make it a lot harder for me to win. So I stayed behind Vieira, fuel saving, which turned out to be a very good thing, and I wanted to get by him, and when I got by him, I thought I would be able to gap him, but since Vieira is extremely fast, I couldn't, and I was stuck, and he was right behind me, saving fuel the whole entire time, and then I made a mistake in going into one of the corners, which allowed him to get right back in front of me, and for some weird reason, that allowed me to do better, I think, because he was saying, because I was allowed to save fuel and save tires, I think, which is something that I've not really been able to do. And I was able to once again pass him, and he went to the pits early, something that I had tested and figured out was not the right decision because of how much slower it is with having more fuel. For some reason, this track is really fast when you have little fuel. You can take off 5/10 if you have half your fuel tank in. So I stayed out as long as I could, knowing I was making up time on Vieira, and when I pit, I came out a second in front of him. I wanted to use that to my advantage, but since Vieira, once again, is extremely fast, he was able to close in on me, and for the last couple of laps we had a battle. I did not want him to go by me, and once again, using that outside line, I was able to defend from him.
I think you summarized your evening of racing quite nicely there, Ryan. We appreciate the very detailed response, and I want to ask you this as well, because both of those races incredibly hard fought and very well driven from your end. What was probably the harder race from your end? The sprint, 15 minutes long, where you don't have to worry about pit stop, it's just a very hard fought fight, or was it the feature where you had some setbacks to deal with and dealing with that strategy as well? Which one was the trickier race from your end?
Oh, definitely a sprint race. We were all pushing to our limit, and one mistake would send us off into the gravel and maybe even into the barrier, so we had to push without going over the limit. But it was nice not having to worry about the incident count. I think I got 9 in that race. But it was harder because Vieira was always right there with me. We were switching positions basically every single lap on the last couple minutes, and I didn't want any of the drivers behind to get in part, so I had to make for sure the passes that we were doing were still fast enough so the drivers behind wouldn't catch up with us. And having to manage with all that and battling Vieira, outside lines, inside lines, all that, overcuts, undercuts on him, all of those moves made it much, much, much harder than a feature race because, well, I guess we're just pushing harder.
Well, Ryan, congratulations on pulling off the victories here this evening. It's a small little break between now and the next round of the season at Laguna Seca. How do you think that race is going to be in a few weeks' time?
I have mixed feelings about Laguna Seca. It's not one of my favorite tracks, but I know I have lots of practice on it. So I think if I play it right, I can keep up with Vieira and once again maybe even challenge him like I did this weekend, which would be great.
I'll tell you what, if you two put on the hard battling that you did here this evening, I would love to see you two trading blows throughout the rest of the season. Ryan, thank you for joining us in the commentary booth. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
The first shout out is obviously Vieira for putting up a great fight, being an extremely clean driver, and basically giving me a battle that I would never be allowed to have with any person in officials. I'd like to give out to everyone watching this race, spending their time to watch us battle it out, and I'd like to give a shout out to you guys commentators for making it extra enjoyable for the fans, as well as for the other drivers for, once again, being extremely clean and nice, which would allow great racing.
Alrighty, well there you go, Ryan. Congratulations on the victories here this evening. Excited to see you and Vieira possibly trading blows yet again at Laguna Seca in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you.
That is Ryan Odo, our winner from both the sprint and the feature race this evening. And I think we have Rylan Richard also waiting in the interview waiting area. So Charles, would you like to have a chat with Rylan Richard as well?
Sure, let's bring Rylan in and we'll have a chat with him real quick. Rylan, congratulations, P4 overall. So talk about your race a little bit. You were kind of in that second group, like the lead three just kind of checked out and left you guys in the dust a little bit. But I think you had some pretty decent battles on the track during the course of your night tonight.
Yeah, it was a really good race. I kind of got bogged down at the start, and then from there it was just kind of recovery mode from there. Ended up going for the overcut on forgot who it was, but overcut worked, and then Orman and I had a pretty decent battle at the end there for fourth. So it was a great time, great racing, and respectful racing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That just seems to be the theme from all of the drivers that we've interviewed during the season is very respectful racing, a lot of clean driving out on the track. Of course, obviously, incidents happen, and you just can't fault people for making an accident, making a bad move or a bad call. So I'm not really sure to see. So how do you think about your chances at Laguna Seca coming up in our next race?
Yeah, I would love to be able to do it. Unfortunately, I will be away for that race. We are supporting the flyover for the Iowa IndyCar race, so I will be on that trip flying the F-15 and doing the flyover on both races.
I mean, you would rather fly an F-15 than drive a Radical on iRacing. I'm shocked.
It's an incredible opportunity that I've been able to work out, and IndyCar's been great to our unit, so we're happy to support them.
Well, as an Army vet, I always love hearing those. I wished I never had a chance to do any. Obviously, being in the Army, don't have a chance to do any flying. But I do support all my brothers and sisters and all the branches. So yeah, enjoy that. That seems like that's going to be a fun trip. So we'll see you. We'll see you next time when you're back, when you're able to come back and race with us. Is there anybody you want to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Yeah, just thanks to all friends and family who watched today. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks, and I appreciate the support from all you guys.
All right, Rylan, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Charles. Thank you for your service. See ya.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Rylan Richard, which I think has to be the coolest I'm not going to be racing next time out story we will ever hear here on Apex Racing TV. God bless America. That was absolutely awesome. So he's not going to be there at Laguna Seca in a couple of weeks' time for very good and very enjoyable reasons. And you got a chance to say it, and I will say it as well. We thank Rylan Richard for serving this country. But Charles, Laguna Seca in a couple of weeks' time, that's going to be, I think, very similar to this race this evening with some unique American flair. What are your thoughts heading into that race in a couple of weeks' time?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is it's very similar. It actually would be, you know, I think if you were going to equate it to a track, probably a little more similar to maybe a Brands Hatch. Bigger track, obviously elevation changes, the corkscrew, we can't forget about that. We replaced all the grass on the outside with sand, so it should make it a little bit easier to keep the car off the barriers. But you know, it's one of our free tracks in iRacing, so everybody should have plenty of experience racing it. And I'm sure that the week lead up, there'll be lots of guys running officials in preparation. So yeah, it should be a really good race. It's a fun track. There's obviously a couple of trouble spots that we'll have to talk about when we get ready for that broadcast. But yeah, it's going to be one to look forward to.
That is going to be a very enjoyable race in 1 week's time, and hearing that the track is just surrounded by sand compared to what we have here with grass and gravel. I don't know why I think of the old Sam Kinison bit talking about sand and world hunger and all that stuff. Anyone, after this broadcast ends in a couple of moments' time, you should probably take a look at that clip on YouTube. I cannot recite it because there's certain language that would not, would probably get me in trouble here on Apex Racing TV. I'll just leave it at that, but I think leaving it off on this broadcast, awesome stuff at Oulton Park. Probably the most exciting night of racing action we've had thus far this season. This was an awesome way to kick off the second half of the 2024 Radical Americas Championship. Hard racing we've got in store for you here on Apex Racing TV. And if you're in the mood for some radicals, definitely check out the Radical Esports Cup on Apex Racing TV every single Friday. Gives you more of a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well, so you never miss a single thing here on Apex Racing TV. And we'd also like to add a quick little note before I finally wrap things up. Apex Racing TV just broke 16,000 subscribers today, so very cool on that. But as for this broadcast, I think that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a wonderful job working the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you all again when the Radical Americas Championship returns in about 3 weeks' time.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.